Pedwar llew tew heb ddim blew, dair ochr yma a dair ochr drew. Pennill y bardd cocos yn anfarwoli'r creaduriaid. Ond fel anifeiliaid go iawn yn y gwyll, llechu yn y cysgodion islawr ffordd mae'r cerfluniau ers tro, a hynny'n siomi'r ymgyrchwyr yma.
Mae ddeiseb ar y we i pob gael seinio, ac da ni eisiau cysylltu efo Senedd i gael gweld be fysa nhw medru gynnig efo eu symud nhw felly.
Da chi'n teimlo bod yna gyfla'n cael ei golli fan hyn?
Oes, definitely oes. Mae yna gymaint o safon dda i twristiaeth i Ynys Môn, dwi'n meddwl, dysa pob gael gweld y llewod yma.
Ar gost o dros 1000 o bunna yr un oedd yn arian mawr nôl ym 1850 mae'r llewod yma ers i'r bont agor. Garreg galch o Benmon maen nhw'n pwyso 80 tunnell yr un. Fe giliodd y llewod wrth addasu'r bont i gario Cerbyda, ond cyn hynny mi wnaethon nhw oroesi'r tân mawr ym 1970, a pan ailagorodd y bont roedd Kevin Thomas yn fachgen ifanc ar daith y tren cyntaf i groesi.
Ath yn nhad a ni drosodd ar y tren cyntaf, a mi gath o i interview gyda heddiw amser hynny felly.
Oedd hi werth dwad eich meddwl?
Oedd, werth o.
Pam da chi'n dod ar plan, ti'n chi?
Am bod yr ringa honyn nhw wedi canlyn esyn ar bont yn dardan, mae'n oedd y papur gyntaf gyda fo'n teigl.
Draw yn llafar pwll felly, be di'r farn am y llewod a'r galw eto am ei gosod mewn lle amlycach?
Dwi'n chofio fel oedd i'r stalwm efo'r llewod yna, te oedden ni edrych ymlaen i weld yr hyn llewod. Ond o bysa, all for it.
Heblaw bod fi wedi gweld lluniau ohonyn nhw, ie, sa chi'n mynd gwybod bod nhw'n neud ei gwir.
Sa bod o falle, dwi'n meddwl bod yn ormod cymeryd sylw dreifas chwaith nag dan, da chi'n bod yn medru bod yn peth perig, ond wedyn, ie, dwi'n meddwl sy'n syniad da.
Draw ym Mhorthaethwy mae'r arddangosfa yma'n dathlu'r ddwy bont dros y fennau, ond bod gan y llewod le anrydeddus yn yr hanes, mae'n y bryderon yma hefyd am ei codi.
So da chi eisiau teo dad dymchwel neu dad adeiladu nhw, bydd chi'n torri a gwaith celf. Efallai byddai'n posibl yn technegol i'w codi gyda crein fawr. Problem eto wrth gwrs di sut ydy'r crein yn mynd at y safle. Na fydd y bont yn digon gryf i cario crein ar y cerrig hefyd.
Yn ôl Network Rail maen nhw'n barod i drafod efo'r ymgyrchwyr ond fydd na ddim cymorth ariannol meddan nhw, a maen nhw'n pwysleisio hefyd bod y bont ma'n un rhestredig gradd 2, a hynny'n golygu y bydda unrhyw newidiadau angen caniatâd cynllunio. Yn ddyddiau cynnar dos gan yr ymgyrchwyr ddim amcan eto be fydda'r gost, ond pwy a wyr falle bod y sôn am drydedd pont neu addasu Britannia eto hyd yn oed yn cynnig y cyfle i godi'r llewod.
We were invited to a party by a girl, and we went to the house, and her parents had gone out and locked the house, so we decided to go down to the tube for a walk. We crossed over a stile, and we just went into the tube.
How far into the tunnel did you go?
About 10 yards.
What did you go in there for?
Well, none of us had been down there before, we just wanted to see what it was like.
And what was it like? Could you see anything?
I couldn't see nothing much. There was only a noise coming from behind the girders.
Was there a lot of rubbish and paper lying about?
No, not really.
Well, now, how did you come to light a fire or strike a match or whatever it was? What happened?
Well, there was a page of a book on the floor, and I had my lighter. And we lit the paper and threw it in, behind one of the girders.
The Britannia Bridge across the Menai Straits, Stephenson's famous tubular bridge, much admired the world over. For 120 years, the rail link between Anglesey and North Wales, and for that matter between Ireland and England. On the night of May the 23rd, 1970, it caught fire, burnt from end to end, and was utterly destroyed. The Menai Straits, separating the island of Anglesey from the mainland, are only 100 yards wide. Yet until 150 years ago, the only way across was by ford. Even now, access depends entirely on two bridges. The first of these was built in 1826 by Thomas Telford, the Menai Suspension Bridge. This bridge carries the road, the vital link, the main artery between Anglesey and the North Wales coast, and in a wider context between Holyhead and the A5. The second bridge consists of two rectangular wrought iron tubes, designed and built by Robert Stevenson, and hoisted, all 10,000 tons of it, 100 feet above the Straits in 1850. This was the railway link with Anglesey and with Ireland. The bridge was built in the first place to carry the old Chester to Holyhead Railway. Holyhead Harbour employs 1,500 men. The Holyhead-Dunleary run became the fastest sea route to Ireland, and it all depends on the trains, the Irish Mail and the Emerald Isle Express, both speeding towards Holyhead on the night of May the 23rd. And at the bridge that evening, there were various people taking the air.
We were camping up there, and we came down here on the Saturday, you know, to something to do because of the traffic on the roads.
So you came to look at the bridge?
Yes.
What time of night was that?
It was about 8:30 time.
And what did you see?
We saw three boys coming out of the one tube. That was the tube where the trains go to Holyhead. And they came out and they all hid against the wall, and there must have been somebody else coming through. Then the fourth boy came out and they all jumped out to frighten him.
Did you draw the conclusion that they were up to no good?
Well, I didn't really know what to think because, you know, I'm in a strange country and I just don't know what happens round there.
We'd gone down to look for my sister Alison, and we walked down towards the bridge and we saw some boys on the bridge, about 4 or 5.
It must have been about 9:15, it must have been rather late. And we'd seen some boys down on the line, so we went down to them and asked them if they'd seen, you know, they'd known the other girl, and asked if they'd seen her at all.
While we were talking to them, we saw a man come out from behind the right line, and we saw that he had some kind of gun or something.
We looked towards the entrance of the tube and to see, in fact, if there's anybody. This chap was still following us, and there wasn't any sign of anybody. And then smoke started coming out of the, left-hand side of the tube. And we thought this was rather odd.
We saw sparks jumping around inside it, and then we saw some smoke just come out of it, big and, you know, really black.
So we ran like nobody's business back and telephoned at the farm, which is the nearest telephone. Oh, hello. Please.
At 9:40 p.m, Mrs. Ellis's call set the wheels of the emergency services in motion. Though some of those in charge who knew the bridge were sceptical, to say the least.
My first reaction certainly was one of disbelief. The bridge had been there for so many years, since 1850. Steam engines had gone through over the years, and I certainly didn't believe that a metal bridge like this could have gone on fire.
Received a telephone call from fire control to say that there was a small fire at the base of the land tower on the Carnarvon side. We get a considerable number of grass fires in this area, and I didn't take too much notice of this at the time. I dispatched 2 machines from Bangor and waited to hear the results.
About half a mile away, there was quite a huge glare in the sky and rolling clouds of smoke coming up, so I knew this wasn't an ordinary job at all.
reports came in from vehicles which have been deployed to the scene, and they passed messages giving some indication of the intensity of the fire. The police communications van was brought there. Mobile incident force was set up at the scene. The GPO provided telephone lines to the mobile incident post.
Knowing the structure of this bridge, I realised what had happened, and I knew we'd got a serious fire on our hands.
The fire brigade, hell-bent to reach the scene of the conflagration, was soon to find the operation would not be a smooth one. There were certain serious difficulties to be overcome.
Well, first of all, the first problem, of course, of access was access from the main road. This was via an unmade road, about 3/4 of a mile in length, to the entrance to the bridge tunnel itself. There is a very low bridge across the track leading to the bridge from the main road, and this did present problems of headroom, of large appliances getting through. But we managed to get the portable stuff down. When I arrived, we had 2 machines there, each of these carrying 400 gallons of water. But there were absolutely no water supplies at all in the area. There's no piped water of any kind. And the only water available was that flowing in the Menai Straits below the bridge. Everything had to be manhandled down from the entrance to the bridge tunnel down to the straits, and water pumped back up to the top. I think this took us about 30 minutes to get this water back.
And all the while, the fire was taking hold.
All this time, the fire was being driven across the strait by a fairly good breeze off the landward side from Carnarvon, and it was developing at a very rapid speed. And before we had water back again, the fire had crossed across the centre of the Menai Straits.
While the fire took a steadier grip, those 2 expresses carrying unsuspecting passengers were hurtling through the night and coming nearer every minute.
2 boat trains were due to cross, one from London and one from Manchester. At the time I came out, the one from London was already standing at Llandudno Junction waiting to go forward. So our organisation then had to be set up to organise buses to take all these people from Llandudno Junction and Bangor to Holyhead to catch the boat train, which sailed at 3:15 in the morning.
Did they all catch it?
They all caught it, yes.
Nobody was stranded at all?
Nobody was stranded at all.
The development of the fire was due to the nature of the roof structure that was covering the bridge. The bridge is made or is constructed of 2 tubular wrought iron boxes which span across the straits from one side to the other, with an air gap of about 10 foot between them. And at some time during its early life, an angle iron structure, rather like a barn roof, had been constructed across the top of the 2 boxes, covering the airspace as well. And on top of this, this had been boarded with tongue and groove boarding and had been heavily pitched, presumably to protect the bridge structure from the weather. And this had created a void which was open to the air between the 2 boxes of about 3'6" in the centre. And the fire was developing underneath the roof structure and was travelling through the aperture between the 2 boxes across the straits. So in actual fact, there was a fire underneath the bridge about 50 yards ahead of the actual fire on the top of the roof structure. The fire had advanced to a point where we had to get in front of it to stop it. We put ground monitors down at the river bank to try and throw water onto the top of the bridge, but the height of the bridge at this point is about 150 feet above water level, and the difficulty of getting a good striking jet across at that point was extremely hard. Most of the water was falling short, and it was at this time that I decided that we had to make an attack from within inside the bridge.
I ran down to see if we could get some other access further on the tunnel, and I saw a railway engineer, and I asked him, can't we get anywhere further into the tunnel and out on the bridge someplace? And he said, yes, there's a steel inspection door a good way into the tunnel. Well, I walked for quite a distance in the dark, and it was a horrible experience. I was really scared because the noise in there was terrific, because it's all a metal tube, you see, and there were clangings, echoing and re-echoing, and series of minor explosions and things, and I was scared. But
You were scared?
I was scared. It was terrifying. But the noise in there was so terrific, and the clanging noises, and I thought it was metal buckling, you see.
You thought the bridge was going to collapse under you?
Yes, well, it could do. As far as I knew, it could have gone any minute. Anyway, I walked on about 60 or 70 yards, and I hadn't seen a door. And I really thought this is as far as I should go. But I carried on a bit further. I must have passed one door, and I didn't see it. Anyway, I carried on for about another 30 or 40 yards, and I thought, well, this is it, I'm going back. But I saw a door. It was a narrow steel door in the side structure. So I opened it, and I nearly had my head blown off when I put my head in to have a look back the way I'd come. You see, it's two tunnels in one, and there was a gap of about a yard in between the two. And there was a fire in there raging from one end to the other. It was, and I realized at the time that it had beaten us. The geographical position and the construction of the bridge had beaten us. And I was walking in a sort of a horizontal chimney, and there was a hell of a draw there. And it was terribly hot, and I could hardly breathe in there by now. So I knew this is it, and I went out quick. It was the longest journey I ever had, 100 yards back. The fire was underneath us, on top of us, and on the other side. On the way back, I saw something which appeared to me like a crack in the tube itself, where the bolts along the side of the bridge had parted from the next portion. There was a gap there about an inch long, and going up as far as I could see. This thing is about 32 feet high, you see.
There came a rumbling within the bridge, sounding rather like a peal of thunder echoing through the mountains. And the whole of the bridge structure started to vibrate. The tunnels began to vibrate. I didn't realize at the time just what was happening, but I knew that the bridge was responding to the temperature above it, and I thought that the structure was becoming dangerous. It was just like looking into hell itself. There was molten tar, burning tar, pouring down from the bridge structure above. The whole of the bridge roof above was enveloped in a swirling mass of red fire, choking smoke from the burning pitch on the roof above. And I decided that no man was going in there. Bridge or no bridge, this was too dangerous.
Never had a fucking else chance, right from the word go.
I think I knew within minutes of arriving that we had reached a situation that we were not going to cope with. But we had to drive the crews on to make every effort to check this fire. But it was finally about 3 o'clock in the morning when I, with the chief officer, after consultation, decided that there was little more that we could do on this side.
The men of the Anglesey Fire Brigade as well fought the fire through the night, but the smoke and heat were too much for them, heat that burned through the soles of their boots. In the end, the fire was left to burn itself out, and with the dawn came the big question: why did it happen?
It was considered from the beginning whether this was a malicious fire or whether it was accidental. But bearing in mind that steam engines had traversed the tunnel since 1850, it seemed very unlikely that it was an accidental cause. Therefore, the whole police investigation was centred around the fact that this may well be a malicious fire.
Was there any evidence that would increase your belief that it had been arson?
Well, yes, indeed. The lady who first reported the fire had seen it first and dialed 999. She had seen a man at the entrance of a tunnel carrying what appeared to be a gun. And later on the same evening, she'd heard what appeared to be 2 shots coming from inside the tunnel. Of course, this gave far more sinister implications to the whole thing.
Did you find out whether there had been a man with a gun?
Yes, indeed. He was traced. I think about 2.5 hours later, he was traced and he was questioned by the police. And he was a person who has a previous conviction for setting fire to a building.
And he had a gun with him?
He had a toy pistol with him.
When you thought that it might have been maliciously set on fire, did you begin to think of any particular person or persons who might have done it?
Well, yes, we naturally think on those lines. Could it be a disgruntled employee of the railways? Could there be any political implications? And of course this person with a gun.
When did you discover that it wasn't malicious?
Well, when the offenders were traced and interviewed, they admitted setting fire to it, or at least they said how the fire started.
You say when the offenders were traced.
Yes.
Was it luck or police work that led to them?
No, it was hard police work. The 5 young men had been seen by the lady who reported the fire at the entrance of the tunnel. And of course it was a matter of tracing these, identifying them and interviewing them.
Did they try and resist? Did they say that they hadn't done it?
No, not at all. They were quite frank about the whole thing. I'm quite certain they didn't realise what they were doing.
As the bridge sullenly smouldered and cooled down, the firemen and others who'd fought the blaze so hard pondered ruefully on the hopelessness of their task.
Looking back, should there have been a water supply available? After all, the bridge was a fire risk, wasn't it?
Yes, but the bridge is on railway property, and the railway look after their own fire prevention arrangements. It would have been ideal if we could have had a hydrant near, but we can't interfere with railway property in that way. We have been on that bridge on fire prevention work with the railway authorities. We knew the risk, we knew exactly what drill to adopt if the bridge did catch fire.
But surely, if you've been there with the railway authorities, you also knew that there was no water available immediately in advance.
Yes, the railway authorities knew that too. But we always knew there was a man posted on the bridge at either end who used to be a form of caretaker. So there could be no question of trespass when that had happened, but we don't know when this man was withdrawn.
He was a British Railways man?
He was a British Railways man.
Was he withdrawn recently, or...?
I'm not able to answer that question because I don't know the time when he was withdrawn.
Except for periodical observation, waiting or seeing if there was any trespass, we don't give it any more attention than any other bridge or tunnel.
I think there was workmen here in the daytime, but I've noticed there's a fence all around it, and it's got notices not to trespass on the line, and they are in English, and also it's translated in Welsh as well. And I think British Railways did everything, you know, possible to tell people not to get on the line.
If there'd been a caretaker there, these lads wouldn't have been allowed into the tunnel.
In the days of the steam train, there were men either end, and that was because the old steam engine threw off hot cinders, and they themselves would ignite any dry material, and that was their purpose, to be there.
The only likelihood of fire happening inside the tubes was the sleepers themselves. But the bridge, the actual woodwork on top of the bridge, I doubt whether that would have ever caught fire from sparks from the train.
But for years, for generations, there'd been a policy, hadn't there, of tarring the wood to preserve it?
Oh, yes, yes, and tarring the tubes too, where it was exposed to the elements.
Rendering the whole thing even more inflammable?
That's correct.
British Rail declined to be interviewed on the questions raised, but their spokesman declared that as steam trains had passed through the bridge for over 120 years without causing a fire, they didn't consider it now to be a particular risk. They added that when special work was carried out in or near the bridge, particular safety precautions were then taken.
Going back to the night of the fire, was this the biggest incident in your career?
Not the biggest, no. I've tackled blitz fires in London far easier than I've tackled this fire. I could have tackled this fire. With a blitz fire, or with any fire in a large warehouse, you've always got four sides in which you can tackle a fire. But with this one, you had to get the fire out in that first land-based pier before you could enter the bridge. At every fire, a fireman risks his life, but with the difficulties that we were confronted with on that night, the risk was that much greater.
So it was time for inspection, time for counting the cost. And from the very start, it was obvious that the damage was going to prove cruel and crippling. In the first place, the roof, that inflammable roof, had gone completely. There was nothing left but the girders. And then the metal had cracked as the bridge temperature returned from red hot to normal. And the tubes, those wrought iron tubes, Stephenson's pride and joy, were obviously no longer able to bear even the lightest of loads. Far from it. There were fears they might not even sustain their own weight and just fall into the straits below. So the Royal Engineers were called in to make them safe. Back at Holyhead Harbour, giant diesel locomotives stranded on the island by the fire had to be taken off by ship, looking for all the world like elephants going into captivity. While the carriages, being that much lighter, were winched slowly and painfully through the burnt-out tube. The clearest evidence, if further evidence was needed, that the railway link with the mainland was destroyed. The only link left was Telford's suspension bridge, carrying just the one road, one narrow carriageway each way. It's always a congested bridge with busy tourist traffic. Now it would have to take a much heavier strain. And the tourist trade, what was to become of that? Absolutely essential to the economy of the island. An island geared to attract visitors. Would they come now there were no trains? An island geared to attract new industry, to fight an unemployment which sometimes peaks 10%. Would the new factories starve for want of materials without the railway? And the 1,500 men employed by British Rail at Holyhead, what about them? The mail ships had been transferred to Heysham. The latest development at Holyhead had been British Rail's brand new Freightliner terminal, which had cost £7.5 million and which was going into service. So, hasty improvisation was the order of the day. The Freightliners were taken by road to the mainland and from there on by train. The traffic in Irish cattle, 60,000 a year of them, has been maintained, but the beasts have been badgered as they were never badgered before. To Holyhead by ship, then out and by road across the county and the straits, and then all change for the railway. But it's been devilishly expensive. Expensive in time and money. This continual process of loading and loading again, into the ship and out of the ship, into the lorry and across the bridge and out of the lorry and then onto the railway, it's been a grueling, testing time for British Rail locally. A holding operation to keep what they could of their precious freight traffic until the bridge opened. It's cost them several £1 million, but they've kept the lifeline open in the hope that the present loss of traffic will prove temporary. But what of the lasting effects on Anglesey?
It's very difficult to say what the precise effects are. In the first place, I wouldn't say that it would have any permanent effects on the economy of the island. I do not believe that as far as tourism was concerned, for example, which we were all concerned about last summer, was really very much affected. This was the assessment made by, I believe, by the Anglesey Tourist Board. A marginal effect, but not a great effect. And then again, the most important thing, what effect could it possibly have on the traffic, passenger and cargo, between Holyhead and Ireland? Are these people going to come back? Are the passengers going to come back? Is the cargo going to come back? Well, I think British Rail believe that it will.
We are confident. A lot of market research has told us that this is the best route into Ireland and out of Ireland, being only a 3.5-hour sea journey, and we're confident we can get all our traffic back again.